Something feminism is very guilty of is saying something is one way and then leaving out all the reasons for why that is. So, for example, with the wage gap, they'll say women are making less money than men, and that points to sexism, and we got to fix that. But then they leave out the fact that men are working more hours, taking less time off, and pursuing higher paying and more dangerous jobs. And they'll say women who are working and have a career are still doing more housework than their spouses. And they'll say that's a sign of male incompetence and laziness. But they leave out the facts that we're going to cover. And for reference, this is usually how it goes.
This is why I don't think the great debate has ever been working mothers versus stay-at-home moms. I think the great debate has always been, why the fuck does my working husband, while I'm working, not also do chores? Why, if we are pulling in paychecks, both of us, not also pulling in equal loads of laundry? It's not that stay-at-home moms are not doing a ton of fucking work. It's just that they're doing all the work with the expectation that that's their only work. It's still a 24-hour job. It's still a nonstop expectation. It's still a full job. But I've always said that my role as
And we're going to address that claim here in a bit.
a stay-at-home mom makes my marriage work easier because we have very set expectations. And even on top of that, my husband will come home from work and be an equal partner in the household and the children when he's home. My working hours alone are the same as his working hours alone. When we are together, we are doing things together. Working moms do not have an issue with stay-at-home moms. Working moms have an issue with the improportional amount of domestic labor that they are expected to do while also bringing home the bacon. It's husbands.
And this is the root of it. This idea that men aren't pulling their weight. They're lazy, right? And these women are overburdened, overworked, burnt out, and unappreciated. And the story goes, right, she works all day and then she comes home and doesn't get a break. And the conclusion they push is that women are outworking men completely. They're doing more than men. And the guys are falling behind. And they're not carrying their weight. And there's an underlying message there, and it's kind of that these guys are oppressing their wives or girlfriends by creating an environment where the woman is basically being used as a slave and is overworked. And then they'll go on and they'll use that myth as an argument for why women initiate most divorces. Now, this is from the Institute for Family Studies, and I'm going to try to cut out the fat here so we can get to the point and not bore you. But, of course, if you want to check it out yourself, you should do that. So the myth of the lazy father. Let's see. You've probably heard a lot of complaints about dads over the past few years. We fathers are not pulling our weight around the house. Poor mom is stuck working a second shift, doing more than her share of household chores, even after a full day at the office. In fact, even good dads aren't so good after all, and don't deserve all the praise that is apparently heaped on them when they're seen in public with their kids. Allow me to dig into the data on how parents spend their time, and it's a side that makes dads look good. My core points are these. Among married couples living together with kids, if anything, it's dads who do more work in total, adding up paid work, housework, childcare, and even shopping. Moms do more work in some specific circumstances, but the data acquit fathers as a group of the slacking charges so frequently leveled against them. Okay, let's see here. Who works more? And in this paragraph, he's going to cite his sources. I'll start with a fact that has been reported several times, yet mysteriously has never inspired think pieces in mainstream media outlets. Isn't that interesting? Combining housework, childcare, and paid work, dads put in just as much time as moms do. In fact, a little more. So the Pew Research found this in 2011, American Time Use Survey. Again in 2016, joint panel of Brookings Institution and the American Enterprise Institute confirmed the results using 2015 data, combining 2013 to 2017 American Time Use Survey, and limiting the data to respondents married and living with their spouses to ensure the moms and dads represent similar households. I find a gap of about 40 minutes per day or 4.5 hours per week, about 59 for men and 55 for women. But that's a big overall number that might obscure a lot of variation. Maybe A, moms are more likely to stay home, in which case they put in fewer hours. But B, in cases where moms and dads both work for pay, women end up doing far more work. Except that's not true either. At least if you take account of the fact that when both parents work for pay, dads tend to work longer hours at their jobs. I find remarkably similar time investments by working moms and dads in the same situations. So in cases where the respondent works for pay and so does the respondent's spouse, dads do 62 hours worth of total work each week to mom's 59. In cases where both the respondent and the spouse work for pay full-time, dads work 63 hours in total to mom's 62. And towards the end of the video, we're going to focus on this graph here. In these couples, the working spouses work about the same amount whether they're moms or dads, but the non-working spouses work a lot less if they're dads. So we can see here, dad full-time, mom at home. Obviously, there's a big difference here. Dad working more than mom. Then we go over here to mom full-time, dad at home. The stay-at-home dads are not putting in as many hours as the stay-at-home moms. So later on, we're going to kind of speculate why that is. Among respondents who work full-time and have a spouse who is out of the labor force and non-disabled, dads work 62 hours to mom's 61. In the flip side scenario, where a non-disabled respondent is out of the workforce and has a full-time working spouse, dads work just 33 hours to mom's 46. That's a gap of about 2 hours a day. Of course, stay-at-home moms are far more common than stay-at-home dads, and even stay-at-home moms do less total work than do full-time working dads married to stay-at-home moms, 46 versus 62. So this exception, while dramatic and worthy of study, is limited in terms of its effect on the overall comparison of moms and dads. Some have also taken the approach of quantifying leisure rather than work, finding that dads get more of it, but as noted in this book he keeps referencing, the additional leisure that dads get is canceled out by women spending more time on sleep and other personal care activities. I'll further stipulate that when parents break up, moms are more likely to get the kids, which is a difficult situation to evaluate because there's little data on men with non-resident kids. So preferences matter. What about housework? Yes, women do more, which, as we've already seen, is generally a problem only if you ignore men's greater hours at their jobs as a balancing factor. And on top of that, there's very good evidence that men don't want a lot of housework to be done by anyone. They're not blowing off necessary cleaning. They just disagree how much cleaning is necessary, as is clear from the fact that single men with no kids do only half as much cooking, cleaning, and laundry as do single women with no kids. In a marriage, both partners should be willing to do their fair share of work needed to get the house to a socially and hygienically acceptable level, but beyond that, the cleaner partner has no right to insist on a higher standard than his or her spouse wants and force the partner to carry half the burden. Lest this sound like I'm venting a person. Okay, he goes into his personal story. Once again, these are aggregates. Each couple is different. If you don't like the division of labor in your household, talk to your spouse about it. But the division of labor in households, in general, hardly seems troubling. So Robert Verbruggen is a research fellow of the Institute for Family Studies and deputy managing editor of National Review. 1, I include more than 13,500 respondents who are living with a spouse and share the household with at least one of their own children. Due to the limits of the ATUS, Spouses are considered out of the labor force if they A, were recorded as not in the labor force several months earlier when these same households participated in the current population survey, and B, are still not working as reported in the ATUS itself. These numbers are all a bit higher when you include caring for non-children and shopping. So in order, 64%, 33%, 44%, and 32%. So again, contrary to widespread belief, when you consider both paid and unpaid labor, fathers and mothers do similar amounts of work. In fact, on average, fathers do slightly more. And here we can see, right, that in dual income homes, fathers are putting in more total work hours. In dual income, both full-time homes, fathers are putting in more work hours. And in the dad full-time / mom at home setup, of course, dads are still putting in more work hours. And I would imagine this applies to the woman we played at the beginning, right? The one complaining about how, as a stay-at-home mom, she's working so much, and she's even nagged her husband into doing extra work the moment he walks in the door. If we applied these bars to their relationship, I'm pretty much certain it would be more asymmetrical than what we see here. And yet that woman still thought, she had it rough or has it rough. But then over here, we can see that when it's mom full-time and dad at home, the woman is putting in more work, more total work hours. And the stay-at-home dad is doing less than a stay-at-home mom. I'd be interested to hear from you guys why you think this is happening. Personally, I think there's a selection bias, right? Stay-at-home dads are a very small, unusual subset of men compared to stay-at-home moms. And because the dynamic is rare, I believe the men who fall into that category often aren't going to be doing it for the same general reasons women do. A lot of guys in this category, they might be going through a layoff or some kind of economic, downturn. This isn't their normal lifestyle. Or maybe, they just don't want to work, and that's exactly why they end up in that category. And I think those types of men are pulling down the average. It could be a lot of reasons, though. I'm not sure, but like I said, I'd be interested to hear your opinion. But overall, we can see that, the whole feminist belief that women are, outpacing men and outworking them, and men are lazy or falling behind, it's bullshit. Yes, it's true women do more housework, but as we read, that's only a problem if you ignore men's greater work hours at their jobs. That is the balancing factor. And also a lot of it comes down to, differences between the sexes. If you are someone with a super high standard of cleanliness that, goes beyond hygienic, then do it yourself and stop nagging. But at this point, we can, put that feminist myth to rest, right? The lazy father and the overburdened mother. It is fantasy.